Kyle Dake got upset by Zahid Valencia. And that was more than just a surprising loss. That was a statement by David Taylor, Oklahoma State, and the Cowboy RTC.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And that is right. You are locked on to Penn State Wrestling and the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club as the U.S. Open has come to a close for the senior circuit. My name is Seyko, and I am your host, as always, of the #1 Penn State sports podcast out there. Plenty to discuss. A lot of things that we're going to talk about today as Nittany Lion Wrestling Club members were out in full force over in Las Vegas. Luke Lilledahl looked dominant. Is he ready to take on Spencer Lee at Final X after winning at the U.S. Open? Mitchell Mesenbrink teched. That is right, teched David Carr. But we got to begin with Kyle Dake. Legacy on the line to continue what he's been doing, bumping up 2 weight classes, and gets upset by Zahid Valencia. As always, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Be a part of the conversation. Kyle Dake losing to Zahid Valencia, and there was a gap. It was 8-4, the final. And Kyle Dake's going to have a chance to respond. He's got to go through the World Team Trials. Could possibly meet Valencia again at Final X. If he happens to go that route at 86 kilos, could he go down to 79 kilos? Because we're going to talk about that. Hindsight's 2020. Should Dake have even moved up 2 weight classes? But I want to address my original point that I opened up the show with. This was more than just an upset loss. Kyle Dake's one of the best of all time. And Valencia cuts into that legacy. Well, where is Valencia affiliated with? Makes that switch over from Sunkist to Cowboy RTC, working specifically with David Taylor. Who was in his corner? David Taylor, the guy that could never defeat Kyle Dake. And going this route into coaching now gets this laugh. I can't say that it's the final laugh because, like I said, Dake could easily bounce back here. But Oklahoma State Cowboy and the Cowboy RTC have shown that they're here to stay and that they've made some progress towards what Penn State is doing as a wrestling collegiate team, but now what the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club is. And I'm not trying to say that, oh, this is the end of anything or the sky is falling for Cale Sanderson and what he's built and everything. No, but I'm saying that David Taylor is starting to take some of that cachet away. This is a massive statement because you go out and you recruit Zahid Valencia and a guy like Joey McKenna as well, who also came out on top at 65 kilos. Oh, and Jax Forrest, a high school junior, won at 61 kilograms and is into Final X against Vito Arujau. Oklahoma State and Cowboy RTC and David Taylor had a phenomenal weekend. It's not to say that the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club didn't either. Well, Mitchell Mesenbrink won. Kyle Snyder was as dominant as ever. Luke Lilledahl looks like the real deal and could potentially challenge Spencer Lee. But Kyle Dake was supposed to be a part of that group. I think this could have been, now if Kyle Snyder had lost, I think everyone would have been in total shock and awe there. Kyle Dake losing, though, maybe some people called this upset. I imagine they did. Valencia's a really talented wrestler, and if it wasn't for the singlet pull, was very much on his way to defeating an Aaron Brooks. And history looks completely different. We're in an entirely different alternate reality where if Valencia happens to win, who knows, right? David Taylor's not even in Stillwater. That's an entirely different conversation. But I see some of the comments that say, don't say that there's a rivalry here. There is absolutely a rivalry here because Penn State and the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club would have just a clean sweep, utter dominance. And now you have 3 Cowboy RTC wrestlers take those weights. Wyatt Hendrickson, no, I'm mistaken. 4. I didn't even include Wyatt Hendrickson. Wyatt Hendrickson takes one, very close to seeing Dean Hamity. So this is more than just, well, it's an upset loss. Maybe Kyle Dake does bounce back, but it's more about the emergence of what David Taylor is doing with his setup. And Kyle Dake to lose to Valencia, I don't think is shocking. Like I said, did I expect him to win? Dake, yes. But could I foresee a scenario where Valencia wins? Absolutely, and that's what happened because Valencia had the better strategy. Dropping to the mat, using the out of bounds rule to his favor to prevent any force outs because Kyle Dake, when in doubt, go get a point, go get a point, go get a point, chip away or just continue to incrementally build that lead. David Taylor knows that very well, right? If anybody has the inside scoop on how to defeat some of these Nittany Lion Wrestling Club wrestlers, it's David Taylor. So he had the textbook to either challenging Kyle Dake and making it close or outright defeating him. Valencia got the early takedown and then just used strategic defense because there might be criticism of the rules that Valencia, was using to his advantage, but the rules are the rules. I don't like them just as much. I'm sitting there watching this one go down. Shouldn't Dake have a point there? Are we sure that's not one extra point for Kyle Dake? But no, because he dropped to a knee, that there's no points and that it offsets and you just go back. So Valencia executed a perfect strategy. He wrestled a perfect match in that moment to defeat Kyle Dake. And Dake just really didn't have an answer. And now I think one of the questions that should be asked is, should Dake have even moved up 2 weight classes? I mean, that is somewhat of a significant jump. He has wrestled there before. I'm actually not against Dake moving up to 86 kilos. Would it be better for the United States for him to wrestle at 79 kilos? Yeah, both of those things can be true. Can Dake compete at 86 and can he get revenge against Valencia, hypothetically at Final X? Absolutely. But would it be better for the sake of the United States going into Worlds? Because I thought the 79 kilo weight class seemed pretty wide open there and Dake would have no troubles. But that's part of the challenge. For Dake personally, when you've won at 74, when you've won at 79, why do you want to do that again? Go up to 86 and continue that legacy. That's something that I talked about in these initial 2 previews for the US Open, was that legacy is on the line. Zahid Valencia he is in his prime, and Kyle Dake is trying to preserve his prime. So is Kyle Dake just aging out at this point? Well, he's going to have to prove it through World Team Trials and potentially another Final X matchup where it's a best of 3 against Valencia. But really, the Cowboy RTC and David Taylor and the statement that they made this weekend should not be looked past. They continue to cut into this metaphorical deficit that Penn State has built between the collegiate team and the RTC program. David Taylor has taken that blueprint because he knows how Cale has operated and has copied that almost to a T. He's put his spin on it and is using it at Oklahoma State. And it shows. You don't accidentally get 4 champions at the US Open for your RTC. So I strongly disagree with the fact that, there's no rivalry between Penn State and Oklahoma State. There's no rivalry between Cale Sanderson and David Taylor. There absolutely is. And it's only going to get feistier, more fierce at this point in time. Because I don't think Cale's going to let this one slide. So this is one loss. It's a surprising one. But it's another way to build the brand for Oklahoma State and say, hey, look what we just did. We just knocked off Kyle Dake with Zahid Valencia. Joey McKenna just won at 65 kilos. Wyatt Hendrickson continues his hot streak. Oklahoma State's not going anywhere. And if I'm a Penn State wrestling fan that isn't maybe buying into the hype, thinks that I'm exaggerating this, Yeah, I think you got to at least give a little bit into this and concede and say, okay, you know what? David Taylor is making some strong moves here. And there's more to it than just, it's not going to be for 5, 6, 7 years. Maybe that's the case. In the case of the collegiate team, I think it's 3 years away, but David Taylor he's playing the long game. He keeps getting closer. How about we talk about positives here? Because it's not like nobody won for the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club. Mitchell Mesenbrink, Luke Lilledahl, business as usual for Kyle Snyder. Beau Bartlett ended up suffering a almost predictable defeat to Jesse Mendez. So let's go through those. Primarily Mitchell Mesenbrink, who lost to David Carr once upon a time in that NCAA final, but then just teched him after Carr just defeated a former silver medalist not too long before. We're going to discuss that coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets. That's right, $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. You'll love using FanDuel because FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking your favorite team or diving into the player props. And I mean player props, from three-pointers to steals to assists to points scored to rebounds, you name it. FanDuel has so many ways to bet on your favorite players and your favorite props. Plus, even after the game tips off, say you miss game time, you can even combine your live prop bets into a same game parlay for a chance to win big. So do not miss out. Head over to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. That is right, $250 in bonus bets over at FanDuel.com. And later on in the show, we're going to talk about Luke Lilledahl, Beau Bartlett, and Kyle Snyder, respectively. I do want to discuss Mitchell Mesenbrink and devote his segment just to him, because getting revenge against David Carr when it did not look good right out of the gate. Carr looked, it seemed like everything was going the way that most people would have said. That the consensus was, David Carr is going to take care of this. He's been training in freestyle. Mitchell Mesenbrink probably doesn't have the stamina. He just wrestled a full NCAA season. I get that. But Mitchell Mesenbrink is, I can't say a much better, because he just won an NCAA championship. So I don't want to dismiss that. But his preference, like Luke Lilledahl, I think is freestyle, and clearly, because that's a close loss in the NCAA finals to a David Carr in folk style. And then you go out and win 16-6 against Carr despite the circumstances, right? David Carr's coming into this on a hot streak. He just finished defeating Takatani, former Olympic silver medalist, at that Flow Wrestling event that had Spencer Lee and Masanosuke Ono and everything, right? David Carr wins that fairly decisively. That's a 10-7 result, but that's, whoa. If David Carr can defeat a silver medalist like that, well, Mitchell Mesenbrink, he's coming. It's an uphill battle just for him personally. And Mesenbrink wore Carr out. He's the one that set the tone. And especially when you're down, 4-0, 5-0, Carr's getting to the legs, because that was a weakness. Mesenbrink had showed a clear weakness that, okay, you can get to his legs pretty easily. And Carr's just going to continue to do that. Don't ask me how, because Mesenbrink was in a bad situation early in that bout, in that match, where Carr could have had more points in that scramble in that instance when he got the takedown and could have turned him a couple more times. That really could have got out of hand. That was the change. I don't know if that shifted some sort of momentum or if it just woke up Mitchell Mesenbrink. I'm not sure what that moment did, but Mesenbrink, after that point in time, just completely flipped that around and became the aggressor. Carr was worn out, even though Mesenbrink was supposed to have the stamina problems. Mesenbrink continued to push the pace. Carr ran out of gas. I wanted to use that. I was prepared to use that, and won 16-6. He teched him. He just teched somebody that defeated an Olympic silver medalist not too long beforehand. Mesenbrink is well on his way to not only world championships, but Olympic championships. Now that's heavy talk because these two could very well meet at Final X once again. And that's what I'm fully expecting. Mesenbrink gets to wait, gets to sit back, and he's going to train, of course. He's going to prepare. But David Carr's the one that's got to go back and make sure that he gets there, goes through world team trials to get that rematch to even happen. So I'm fully expecting it here. Mesenbrink, that's impressive. That's really impressive when it looks like Carr has the upper hand. The deck isn't stacked against you, but it's certainly not in your favor. Carr's the favorite in that matchup for the most part. Maybe it's because I'm the Penn State podcast host, but I thought Mesenbrink was going to win. Whether it was the revenge factor or, heck, he's just really good at freestyle. This is his game. He just likes freestyle. And Mesenbrink was relentless. It was also, Carr is a defensive technician. Now, he can score at will, but Carr doesn't really give up a lot of points. And I know that Mesenbrink's an offensive machine, but it's not just a couple of 2-point takedowns here and there. It's those 4-point moves that totally swing the match away from Carr after he's in the lead. So for Carr to give up multiple 4-point moves like that, that's what's really shocking there. This wasn't 1-point, 2-point criteria. No. Mesenbrink teched him by 10 points. Mesenbrink should be the favorite going into Final X. Will it be a closer one the next time around? Probably. Probably if they happen. That's contingent on if Carr actually gets to New Jersey for Final X. I expect him to. This part 2 of if a rivalry is starting to form here, speaking of rivalries, if one's trying to form here between Mesenbrink and Carr, I saw somebody else say online that one way or another, it seems like the United States is going to get a gold medal at 74 kilos. So you can essentially bank that there. But yeah, I mean, David Carr, yeah, impressive. And Mesenbrink was able to defeat him. And speaking of impressive, Luke Lilledahl, dominant, outscoring his opponents 40-4 at the U.S. Open. But is he ready to take on Spencer Lee? That's a tall task that we're going to discuss coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Gametime, you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Gametime makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when the demand is sky high. Prices on the app will actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. That's right, 60%. Here's why you will want to use Gametime. Those last-minute deals, as I mentioned, you get to save up to 60% off of buying last-minute tickets for not only sporting events, but concerts, comedy, theater, you name it. And then all-in pricing. All-in pricing means no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account. Use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. That is LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Lilledahl was dominant. Kyle Snyder was dominant. Beau Bartlett falls to Jesse Mendez again. Mendez just denies him. And Bartlett was so close. Bartlett was so close. I want to start this final segment with Luke Lilledahl. Just absolutely just dominant. Like I said, there's no other way to describe it. There was this sense of Lilledahl, again, is it the folk style to freestyle? Is it just that Lilledahl continues to get better? Because I won't describe it as maybe a switch flipped. He finished at third at NCAAs, and he barely lost to Sheldon Seymour at that point in time. But Lilledahl really has grown up fast here, and I want to say the past few months, getting pinned by Brendan McCrone and then teching Brendan McCrone, that same guy that you got pinned by in the Penn State-Ohio State dual meet back in February, and then 2 months later, you win 10-0, no issues. Lilledahl defeats Liam Cronin in that 57 kilo championship. He just looks like a much different wrestler from my perspective. Again, is it the freestyle aspect to folk style? Maybe, or it's that Lilledahl is just starting to hit his stride, and that's why he was one of the top prospects, pound for pound, in the class of 2024. That's probably why, because you're number one for that exact reason. Because when the switch does flip, there's no flickering. It continues to go on. So Lilledahl has created this momentum here. Can he beat Spencer Lee? Yes, he can. Am I expecting that? At this point in time, as much as I want to be optimistic and confident, Spencer Lee's the real deal. But he did lose to Masanosuke Ono, and Lilledahl did happen to train with Ono, and Ono's now in the wrestling room with everybody. It is possible, and I won't put it so far. That's a shocking upset if that happens. I really do think this is a fairly even matchup. But Spencer Lee, he's stronger. I think he's the much better defensive wrestler, and I think that would be the difference. Is Lilledahl is so offensively gifted, but if your offense isn't working on that given day, how do you respond? Because that's Spencer Lee. Spencer Lee is going to win with his defense every single time, and it is extremely difficult to score on him. So for Lilledahl, what is his game plan going in if Lee's going to be, traditionally what he is as that defensive technician and going up against that? So it's just a different challenge for Lilledahl. But I think this one's a little bit closer than maybe, who knows? We'll see. As this match, that's, and Final X is set, right? This is the Final X match. There's no World Team Trials. There's no projection. This is happening in June. You're guaranteed Luke Lilledahl versus Spencer Lee. I can't wait for it, because is the future now, or does Spencer Lee still have control over this weight class? So time will tell. Everyone's got to be patient. I don't have much on Kyle Snyder. It surprised me that he was going, what's the point of even him wrestling at the US Open? But, book your ticket to Final X. Get it out of the way as opposed to waiting till World Team Trials. I can understand some different scenarios with, again, Levi Haynes, Aaron Brooks, right? Carter Starachi, not there. Ultimately, their plans, are they going to wrestle at the World Team Trials? I would expect so. I'm not really hearing any differently. But Kyle Snyder, don't blame him for just saying, hey, want to get it taken care of. He just dominant as usual, just wins. And it would be his 11th straight. If he wins at Final X, it would be his 11th consecutive World Olympic team appearance for Kyle Snyder. So that's something that needs to be said, that for the past decade, 97 kilos has been run by Kyle Snyder. Also, I don't want to forget about Marcus Blaze in this conversation, as Blaze was considered the favorite going into this 61 kilo weight class that ultimately Jax Force ended up taking. And what a glimpse into the future that would have been if we got to see a Jax Force versus Marcus Blaze final. But we did not, because Seth Gross ended up getting the pin against Blaze, and it was a good tournament, but not up to his standards, not up to his expectations, because he was the number one pre-seed going into this. He had defeated in the past the likes of a Dayton Fix, and Fix unfortunately had to injury default as well. Who knows what would have happened with Blaze and Forrest hypothetically, but in order to get to that point, you have to defeat Gross. You don't, and then Forrest goes on to win convincingly against a Seth Gross, and puts up a ton of points to do it as well. So I think, I don't know that Blaze essentially wrestled his best. He wasn't as dominant as maybe as I expected him to be. He defeated Nathan Tomasello, who was a 4-time All-American, right? So Blaze is still phenomenal. I don't take anything away and say that he can't start next year in Penn State's wrestling lineup or anything like that. But I think I was definitely expecting a little bit more from Blaze, especially to get to the final at least. But I guess the veteran experience paid off for Seth Gross in that case, but overall, Blaze, I don't know. I think he could have put together a better tournament in that moment. And then Beau Bartlett, I don't mean to finish somewhat on a somber note, but I mean, Beau Bartlett has his chance to at least try to figure things out going into the World Team Trials. But it played out exactly as it has been. History has been repeating itself over and over. And I know that Bartlett got his against Jesse Mendez a couple of times in these regular season bouts, and then the one Big Ten championship in 2024. But when the stakes are higher, when there's a true championship on the line, Jesse Mendez has that clutch factor. I'm not sure what it is. I mean, well, that is what it is. I'm not sure how he continues to find that clutch gene every single time. The difference is 3 seconds in an NCAA semifinal. The difference is literally, once again, seconds. Mendez is able to hold out because Bartlett, what's kind of disappointing in all of this is that Bartlett had the opportunity to win if he's maybe a 0.5 seconds, a second sooner to his shot attempt against Mendez. Gets that takedown. It's 4-4, wins on criteria, but the pesky clock. And Bartlett ends up losing to Mendez 4-2. It's the rivalry that keeps on giving. I very much enjoy it every time those two wrestle. I'm on the edge of my seat personally because this is the wrestler that just gives Beau Bartlett fits, and he makes progress. He does. He picked up multiple consecutive victories as it seemed like Jesse Mendez had him figured out and there was a clear gap, but then, Bartlett responded, not with one, but 2 consecutive victories. And then you get to that NCAA semifinal and 3 seconds is the difference. Here you go. You meet in Las Vegas and 1 second is the difference this time. Bartlett is so close, but Mendez is still able to keep him at arm's length. Mendez didn't win, though, at 65. He ultimately lost to a different Ohio State wrestler, who's at Cowboy RTC, as I've mentioned. He's in Stillwater, Joey McKenna. So even if Bartlett gets past Mendez, I don't know that he beats McKenna. Hey, never say never, right? I'm not gonna speak there, right? Every opponent's different. How you match up with somebody is different. You look great against somebody, and then wow, where did that come from against other opponents? Kind of situation, but McKenna's waiting at Final X, and who's going to meet him? Maybe Beau Bartlett gets that opportunity for revenge at World Team Trials, so we will see. That's going to wrap it up for this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. I really appreciate each and every one of you for checking out this show as we're going to continue having these conversations. So Penn State Wrestling, the collegiate team, is not active, but plenty of wrestlers that are affiliated with Penn State where the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club are. So the U.S. Open coming to an end for the senior circuit. U20 is still unfolding at the time of the recording of this episode. World Team Trials, Final X will have all the conversations you could ever want around it. So if you're new to the show, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel wherever you get your podcasts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Be a part of the conversation. And for more conversations around your favorite Penn State sports teams, keep it right here on Locked On Nittany Lions.